the agency see strategists, right? Because just doing a bit of digging, I found out that a number of agencies tend to sort of combine the function of.
If you know this meeting is being recorded, right?
Oh, I just found that out.
It just started now, so just so you know.
So no, I mean it's fine. This is still the practice session,
Okay.
right? We haven't gone into the main room yet. Yeah, so I think it's from the perspective of agencies for
Sorry,
one.
the meeting is past opened.
Oh. All right.
You are here already, yeah.
All right. But hope you'll be able to cut that bit out. So we just start a bit more officially. Okay. So yeah, we'll just wait a little bit of about 3 minutes and then we'll get right into it. But yeah, I'll be sure to make the framing before we start the session. Hello, everyone. It's good to have everyone here today. So we're just waiting a little bit to have a quorum. I see that people are starting to fill in, but we'll just give it another 1 minute before we kick off, right? So we have a quorum ready to go. So in another 1 minute, get right into it. All right. I think we have quite a number of people in here now. So we'll just get right into what we have planned for today. So just as we have a bit of agenda, we'll start with some introductions and then I'll introduce our panelists for today, and then we'll go straight into our Q&A because we have quite a number of things to get through today. So once again, hi everyone, Ife Tabi, Deputy Group Head of Strategy at Noaza Communications, and I'm really excited to be moderating this panel today on surviving the extinction of strategists within the Nigerian advertising scene. So we've got about an hour, 30 minutes together, and my goal is just to make sure that this session is as impactful as possible for you, your agency, and the broader advertising industry at large. And so there's been a lot of debates prior to this session as to whether, strategists might be going extinct, or, whether we should even be using that word extinct in the first place, right? And to that, I say, come with an open mind, but I'm more interested in taking a deep dive as to how we can keep the flame of strategy burning bright and red hot. But I can't do it alone. I'm going to need your help. So please send in lots of questions. If there's something on your mind, feel free to drop it in the comments, especially if it's directed at a particular panelist. I'll try to weave in some of these questions into the discussion, but I'll also leave some for the end. So just a couple of house rules. Please be respectful of the speakers and to each other when using the communication features. Also, this session will be recorded and uploaded digitally, so you don't have to worry if you miss anything. So if all of that sounds good, let's see some thumbs up or a quick good to go in the comments. All right, so now let's meet our panelists, and I'll be doing this in no particular order. Our first panelist is Nnenna Onyewuchi. She's the co-founder and executive director of innovation and strategy at YBR Lagos, with 25 years of experience in strategy across 3 continents, a veteran of over 50 brands, and globally recognized as one of Africa's top strategists. Please let's give a virtual round of applause if we can to Nnenna. Nnenna, it's good to have you here with us today.
I'm happy to be here. But I think I'm like the oldest person here. So maybe I am ready for extinction. Or at least retirement.
Well, I guess we'll get into all of that soon. So next up, we have Sheriff Lanre Akinpelu. He is a global strategy consultant and the group director or the group deputy director of strategy and planning at SPV Communications and the founder of Strategy Tribe, a community that supports and grooms strategists and account planners in Africa. So I'm sure he would have a whole lot to say about this session today. So Sheriff, it's a pleasure to have you here as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ife. I'm also happy to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. So next we have Carol Ofem. She has a master's degree in international public relations from Manchester Metropolitan Business School. She boasts about 14 years of experience in advertising, in PR, and in brand management across diverse sectors. Also, she has extensive experience on the client side with stints at Rough and Tumble as well as Cast 45. So that broad perspective would play a huge role in how we strategists today. So Carol, it's good to have you here as well.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Next we have Deji Adeleke. He's currently a senior strategist at the Crow Group UK. He's also had previous stints at AKQ in London, as well as leading strategy and planning at Noaza Communications. Deji is also an avid gamer. You feel free to name any video game, and I'm sure he's played it before, right? So, Deji, it's good to have you here today with us as well.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
All right, and last but not least, we have Sheriff Adekoye, who is the Group Head of Strategy at Ogilvy Africa. Sheriff has extensive experience in the fields of brand marketing, marketing generally, and of course, communication strategy, with expertise in the application of data-driven insights and the creation of customer-centric solutions, right? So Sheriff Adekoye, it's good to have you here today as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So once again, we can give a virtual round of applause wherever we are. Let's just please welcome these 5 amazing panelists to today's session. So just kicking off real quick, and I'd love to start off with you, Nnenna. I mean, you did say that you have the oldest in here, so perhaps you set yourself up just a little bit, right? So I think we need to talk about the topic a little bit, right? Why are we worried about an extinction event? Did we as strategists at some point drop the ball by, say, not providing more value? Or was it an industry thing, dropping the ball by not promoting strategy, just that little bit more than, say, other disciplines? Because again, you hear of several agencies merging strategy and account management together. You also look at several advertising competitions, right? Whether it's locally or globally, and they rarely have strategy categories, right? So are we in the right to be just that little bit worried about an extinction event?
I don't know if we should be worried. Is there cause for concern? Yes. I think historically, strategy, we're the smallest cohort in advertising. We always have been. Anywhere, even in the, I guess, what is it? The global north is what they call it now. Really, really big agencies. When I worked at McCann, there was 40, 50 people in creative. There were 12 strategists that worked on everything in the business. So strategists have always been a much smaller part of the larger team. And I think that's historically because of the discipline. We're the youngest, right? Strategy as a discipline is it's fairly young as advertising goes. And I think because we were starting from a small base, we've also seen, and all of us who are working in agencies in Nigeria have seen, right? We've seen the massive flight. I'm looking at some people that have flown. Of professionals, right? To Canada, to the UK, to wherever. And every discipline is losing people, but there were fewer strategists to begin with. So there are far fewer of us. In my conversations with other agencies, I think that often the decision to merge strategy and brand management or account management is actually because they can't find strategists. They can't find good strategists. They can't find senior strategists. That's one thing, right? I think that we need to be worried about the fact that we're losing people from the top faster than we're filling in at the bottom. And so we struggle to find strategists. And I think the other thing is just as an industry, that the lines between disciplines it's blurring, right? And I think actually if agencies are merging brand management or client service and strategy, it's probably because they want more strategy in client management. They want business people that think more and aren't just executing, rather than they want less strategy, if you see what I mean. So I think that actually what I find is that there's a lot of people who are strategists moving to the client service side, because as budgets are tighter, everything is more competitive. I think agencies are looking for account management people that can actually think and not just do. So I think one, we should worry because a small group is getting smaller because people are leaving, and I don't know that we're doing enough to fill in from the bottom. I think that as responsibilities and roles kind of merge, the value that we bring in terms of having a more disciplined approach in terms of deep and intentional thinking is much more valuable in other disciplines as well. So I see people who are now like creative strategists, right? Or people are they're strategic managers. So I think what you're finding actually is that strategy is entering other disciplines. And so maybe pure strategy, right? People who only do comms or brands, maybe that is shrinking, but I don't think it's because people don't want it. I think it's because people can't find it. And there are people who might have become pure strategists are taking that mindset and that discipline and that intentionality into other disciplines in advertising.
Amazing.
So
I
worry, but not concerned, but not panic.
Yeah. So I hear you talk about perhaps pure strategy may not be as prevalent as it once was. And Sheriff Adekoye, I would like to bring in at this point. Again, I see a lot of Sheriff Adekoyas, but just the one with his video showing in here, right? So what's your take on that? Do you think strategy is moving beyond just pure strategy, as Nnenna rightly put it? And do you see a situation whereby, say, strategists would need to then bring in these other skills in a bid to showcase more value?
Well, thank you, Tabi, and thank you, Nnenna, for the opener. Well, I think we are at a confluence of confusion, and this challenge is driving super fast, faster than we can imagine. Like she already said, strategy has always been the smallest part of the lot, and now we need to be worried because the smaller part is getting smaller. Then why is that? The dynamics and the landscape is changing. So what we used to have, what we used to learn, what we read about, what we inherited as a traditional planning and strategy expectations or practice is beginning to fizzle out into the homogeneity of the activities. One of those days when the Berlin Wall between planning, strategy, research, data analysis, and all of these things were clear cut. Yes, strategy were prominent, but right now the wall is disappearing. So if you really look at what we have right now, it's a function of the permeability between the core strategy and the new dynamics of communication, marketing communication requires, cutting across digital, traditional, everything we do right now challenges the established traditional speak of strategy. So strategy and strategists need to be worried that extinction is fast approaching. However, there is a window. The window is the fact that it is a call to increase our versatility index. When we become more versatile, then we will definitely sustain our relevance. So that's the call.
All right, thanks for that. And you did mention something about the smaller part is getting smaller and how versatility is quite important. So at this point, I would love to bring Deji into the fore, right? From an international perspective, because a lot of times I see strategists having different titles. Today it's creative strategy, then it's brand strategy, then you have digital strategy separately. Yes, while we might say that it's still all under the account planning discipline that, we like to think that we can do every single thing. Is that the same thing over there? Is it a factor of the market to the point whereby the value strategy a whole lot more, so they're able to sort of have these different distinctions within the UK market to speak of?
All right, cool. Thank you for that question. Can you hear me perfectly?
Yeah, loud and clear.
All right, cool. So there are two questions you asked, like why are there delineations in how they describe them? I think it's not so different. So where I work now, it's called planning. My previous agency, AKQ, is called strategic planning. In several agencies, they call it strategy. And I think the nomenclature is a function of the culture of the agency. In NOASAC, we used to call ourselves planners. We hated calling ourselves strategists. Of course, I won't go into the details of all of those differences, but I think whatever a planner or a strategist within an agency call themselves, himself or herself, is a reflection of the culture or the point of view that the agency has when it comes to planning. So that's on one side. In terms of the level of appreciation in Nigeria, I think it's not as black and white as that. I think it's also a function of the agency. Again, when I was at Noazak, again, agencies are built in the image of the owners most of the time. And if owners value something, the agency will value it, right? And so there are agencies not just here, but also in Nigeria, in every part of the world, that do not necessarily value as much as others. But I think as a whole, there is still more to be done in terms of the level of appreciation for planning. And I'll give you a typical example, and Jumoke is here, and every other account director or, person managing brands in agencies will bear me witness here. If you have a project and you are short of resources, how many times would you find an account director say, oh, MD, we need to find a freelance strategist? Right? You'll see them looking for a freelance art director, a freelance copywriter. You hardly see them looking for a freelance strategist. I might be wrong, but my hypothesis is like, nah, don't worry. We'll put those circles together, those, consumer, category. We just be creative. And I don't necessarily, and I know we'll still talk about this whole gap in skill thing, but it's because even as a strategist, no matter how brilliant you are, the value of your work or the level of dexterity of your work is oftentimes hinged on the level of dexterity of the creative output. So there's always this assumption that we can always be K-legged, in the strategy front, and we just make sure the creatives are awesome. So while there are differences in the level of appreciation, from the agencies, I think as a whole, there's still a lot more that needs to be done in terms of, as a country.
Hey, so speaking about a lot more having to be done, let's talk a little bit about training and development. And for this, I'd love to hear from the man himself, right? That's Mr. Sheriff Akinpelu. Having started a strategy community and school, right? Of course, while also playing a huge role within your own agency as the Deputy Director of Strategy. Right. Would you say that the appetite for strategy has increased or decreased, whether it's from the perspective of young people wanting to enter that industry? Are we seeing more people wanting to become strategists? Are we seeing less of them? And also from the larger advertising body generally, are they increasingly requesting for strategists, or is it a thing of, hey, account manager can do this as well, a copywriter can put those circles together, and just come up with something that sounds really good, and then it can go for a single-minded proposition or whatever we call it in different agencies. Yeah, so I'd just love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ife. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Awesome. So I think I'm going to start with the need for strategists. So, and this is an opportunity to actually, be entirely honest. The need for strategy has risen over time. There is no week that I don't receive calls that so an agency is looking for a strategist, irrespective of where they are in the marketing value chain. Now, where it gets interesting is that agencies and clients, they know how valuable strategists are. But then strategy, or the word strategist, is one of the most used words out there. So everybody is a strategist. When you're trying to solve a problem, somebody is coming up with a strategy, even though it's probably a tactical idea. But the challenge is that there are a lot of people that would, when you put out a job, adverts, a lot of people would apply. And then when they go through the interview process, you can see the skill gap, which Nnenna, Sheriff, and everybody else has mentioned on this call. So the skill gap is very wide. And from my own point of view, I think is a vicious cycle of these factors. So look at it this way. In the past, agencies would train talent, and when those talents become so good, they build the agency business, they build client business, and then clients will come to agency, poach talent to their side, and then it goes on like that. But then marketing budget became tighter, trainings, evaporated. For those who have read the book of the Doyen of Advertising himself, he had to send his favorite art director to TBWA to learn copywriting from Sir John Egerton. That was how training was very important in this industry. Dr. Biodu Shoban just sent, when his copywriter left, he sent his art director to go to TBWA to learn copywriting from Sir John Egerton. And look at Sir John Egerton, the H in BBH today. Look at BBH and then look at Inside Publicists. So you can see that the dynamics is that those who started advertising, then they value training, they value their people and all of that. And the market realities then too were comfortable because of the indigenization policy and all of that. But when you look at this current times, budget is tight. Look at most agencies in GRA are on Band-Aid. So operating expenditure is very tight to keep people, to train and all of that, even though some agencies are doing it. But you find out that agencies have reduced budget, some agencies, not all, because agencies are the ones patronizing us as Strategy Tribe, and not because Strategy Tribe, we've received patronage from NOASAC a lot. And it's as a result of the value for the field of strategic planning. So when you look at that cycle, you see talent that is able to keep talent in the industry. And it's also that AC, irrespective of whether we call ourselves strategists or account planners, I believe that our job is beyond communications or brand building. There is also the business development part of our job, which is to ensure that the lights in our agencies, platforms, and all of those things that we can do to bring in money.
I think Sheriff is having some technical difficulties. Sheriff, you're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit there, but yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, yes. So I'll go back a bit. So it is when we help our agency make more money that we have the ability to earn more. It is also that way that we get the opportunity to receive the trainings that we deserve. So we need to, in the words of Sheriff, be flexible to know that our job is not just maybe do that research, do that strategy, and know that we are responsible for the survival of the agency end to end. So when we are able to do that, it gives us the ability to survive and transcend. And then finally, it is also important for strategists to have seats at the table where decisions are being made. This is because those who are strategists, they have a blessing and a curse, the ability to understand cause and effect before it happens. So they can see, into the future and know what is going to, the opportunities that are there and the opportunities or the threats that we could face. So in most agencies, you find them hiring head of strategy, but then they have business directors, they have account directors. When it comes to strategy, why are you having head of strategy? So, and strategy is your first point of contact with the client that shows how versatile you are as an agency. So while everybody is speaking and tilting towards what we as strategists and planners need to do, we also need to call the attention of the industry, agency owners, clients to invest in agencies so that agencies can also invest in their people, so that clients can pick the best talent from agency to grow their brand. Because oftentimes we end up in meetings where we see some people in the meeting room and we are surprised how they got their job. And it's because those people were also hired from some agencies. But anyways, I'll just leave it there. So the need for strategy has risen, but the will and the resources to build, retain, and make the field of strategy attractive is dwindling. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Sheriff. So you mentioned a couple of things about how, as a strategist, we need to go into things like business development as well, and how we also need to provide value end to end. So Carol, I'll just love to get your thoughts on this. Let's go outside the agency setting, right? For someone like you who has also been on the other end, that's on the client's end, right? What are clients looking for from the strategist? Is it just a thing of hey, do the research, get the insights, sometimes they call us just insight merchants, or is it beyond that? Do we need to start going into that business development and just trying to provide value beyond what would typically define account planning within the agency setting?
So I think that of course we can do much more, but I think my thoughts are centered around can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
My thoughts are centered around clients are looking for a perspective, I would say, insights. They want a perspective that's really valuable and real to their business, and they want people who understand their business problem and are providing them with solutions that are not only advertising solutions, but really, I can see Nnenna laughing, but they're also growth-centric solutions. I think that's what clients really want. When Sharif mentions having a seat at the table, I think that's where my thought also goes to, because to have a seat at the table, it means that you are contributing something valuable to the numbers at the end of the day. So either to the numbers, understanding the consumer, or at least getting the business to a point where someone is actually going to a shelf or a store to actually pick a product. And I think that's what clients really want. The age of being so concerned about the slides that lead to the creative output is just changing. It's what we do is beyond that. And I know, and someone had mentioned it earlier, that we have so many titles now going up the ladder. There's so many titles, but I think the heart of what we do is the same, right? If you look at it across board, it's that we care about businesses. We want them to do better. We say we understand the consumers well. We identify where the client is probably making some mistakes in how they are talking, positioning, dealing with consumers, with customers. And it is our job to bring that perspective to the client, because I think that's really what they care about. If we think about solutions outside of advertising, we can start getting a real valuable place or a real valuable seat at the table. If a problem comes from a client, and I don't think the solution is to jump advertising. It can be a product solution. It can be joining a cause. It can be creating a cause. It can be changing language about your product. It can be designing something for a different target audience. And that perspective or taking that action is what clients really want. You know, they can say it in different formats. Sometimes it's not very clear. And as a strategist, you sit down and you kind of tune your ears to get to what the client wants and provide the steps to get in there. I think that when you talk about skill gap, we also have, in all fairness, a skill gap on the client side, right? In terms of how they have been able to fine tune what their ask is, or what is the clarity to not be so carried away with being viral or caring so much in being in the moment, but really understanding trends and where the consumer is going to and how this consumer is going to be useful in 2 years when my product is changing, or even changing the product as well, or the shape of what the product is offering or the service is offering for that changing consumer. So, and that's all perspective. And if we're able to be very clear, you know, with our relationships with the clients, with the ask, with the objectives, whether it's the tactics, whether it's a blown out methodology, whether it's a small 2-page slider, and know that our work is not to produce creative output alone, but really to add value. I think clients, that's really where clients are. And I think that's what they want.
Amazing. So Nnenna, I would love to get your thoughts on this as well, because at some point you must have made the decision that, hey, I'm going to move my agency beyond just strategy. I'm going to move my role beyond just strategy, and I'm going to bring in that innovation and strategy bits, right? So what necessitated that move? Was it just a thing of, hey, clients are demanding more, or was it a factor of I can begin to offer more, so I need to start looking at innovation beyond just your typical comms strategy as well?
I think, you know, the innovation in my title really comes from our decision as an agency that we need to find better ways to do the things we're already doing, right? So innovation for us, it's about technology, but it's also just about thinking smarter. I think, to build on what Carol was saying, I think that a lot of strategists don't understand their job. Right. A lot of strategists think, okay, my job is to find an insight and create a platform, and then the creatives go off and do the work. As a strategist, your job is to figure out how to make your client more money, right? How do you close the sale? That is really our job. And I think that when I started my career at McCann Erickson, and we're the effectiveness agency. And so from the very beginning of my career, I understood that my job as a strategist was to help the client close the sale, right? To find the key that would unlock their pocket. And that key wasn't always going to be an ad, right? Because depending on what the challenge was, depending on what the competitive reality was, the key, the channel would be different for different audiences and different categories. So I came into YBR already with an understanding, and I'm very lucky that I have a business partner who just went with me, which is that from the beginning, we've been channel agnostic, right? So what we need to do is to find a solution to solve the client's problem, because that's what a client is paying for. They're paying for you to solve a problem for them. I think the challenge that we often have is that a lot of our clients don't understand strategy. And we don't help ourselves because we do the circles, right? We spend a lot of time making slides. And we spend a lot of time, speaking long English, none of which speaks directly to the problem that is keeping the client up at night. So I think when we think about innovation is just a better way of doing the thing you're already doing, right? So I think we all, we try to make it this big thing, but as human beings, we're always trying to find a better, cheaper, faster, more efficient, whatever, and more enjoyable way of getting whatever it is done. But I think and when I teach, right, I say that strategy is simply, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? I think many of us do not take the time to have a full understanding of where our client is and where they want to be so that we can chart the best course. So there's a lot of surface work that we do. There's a lot of work that we do that is intended to pay out to really exciting advertising or creative. I don't necessarily think that as a discipline, we've always presented ourselves as problem solvers and providers of solution. And so for me, innovation, when it comes to strategy, is we know the world has changed, right? You used to be able to spend 3 months doing the research and background and digging in to get somewhere. We don't have those options anymore, right? So what are we doing? But we still need the insights, we still need the information. There's still a level of rigor that we need. The thing as strategists, we need to be innovating around how do we create shortcuts to insight? How are we building more efficient rigor into our own process? Anybody who has worked with me or has ever taken a class with me is always like, you can't, you're waiting until the brief comes to start thinking about this, but they're your client. Right? Every day you should be thinking about, where's my client? I said once to someone, do you understand how your client makes money? If you don't understand how your client makes money, you can't help them. You can't help them grow. And so when we talk about innovation, I think for all of us, we need to really start thinking about, what is the actual purpose of my role? And what are the things that I can start doing now to be able to do that more efficiently, more effectively, and in a more impactful way? It might be technology. It might be shifting the way we think about problems. It might be even shifting the way that we engage with the client or creative. I think the other thing, and I'll stop here because I know other people have things to say, is that I think that and I say this with a full understanding that I'm very guilty of this. Strategists really resist interacting with the client, right? We're like, I want to do my work, so I don't want to be talking to these people. But the truth is, if you don't, I had a boss, the person who really taught me strategy, he said, the secret to being successful is knowing what keeps your clients up at night. And you can only know that if you interact with your client, if you engage with your client, so that you can understand what the real problem is, because the real problem often isn't in the brief.
All right, amazing thoughts, right? So just before we move on to the next question, I'll just love to get your opinion on Sheriff Adekoye and what Nnenna said. She mentioned that we as strategists don't fully understand our role right? Sometimes we can be guilty of just staying in a particular bucket, whereas there's so much more out there for us to do, right? So do you agree with that statement, and do you have any other thoughts in and around that?
Well, I totally agree with her, and I would say this in addition to that. We understand that we are short of great hands, but at the same time, we need to understand that quite a number of people who practice strategy today do not really understand the full chain end to end. Some believes the moment I am done with the strategy, I can back off. You don't back off, you are the architect. Whatever you've designed, you need to see how they bring that to life. The thinking behind it. You saw the beginning, you saw the end in your documents. So how is this manifesting? You spoke about the target audience. This target audience is someone who lives in Ikorodu, but with a mindset of Lekki. And this one is someone who lives in Maiduguri with the mindset of Ibadan. When you put all of those into documents, you need to be part of the execution. And there's no way you want to do E to E without engaging your clients. So if you sit back, stay back, you will lose a bit of this. And of course, when you don't show up, you lose part of the reputation. Most times, some clients don't even understand there's anything or a role called strategy. What they just want to see is that this is happening, and account management guys are getting it done. So most times, a lot of strategies are absent from the call. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for that. So at this point, I would love to get an international perspective. And Deji, this is directed towards you, right? Would you say that, say, clients over there in the UK are upfront about what they expect from the strategists, in the sense of, hey, I'm not just asking you to come up with the insights and the brilliant campaign, I'm looking for a little bit more, right? Or are there other, say, roles that are more inclined towards things like that? And it's just us as, say, agencies in Nigeria just trying to put in quite a number of things together, just to get our value for money from our strategists over here.
Yeah. So I think it's a very interesting question because, I mean, a client will know, obviously, when the client sends you a brief, they expect that it's clear, right? And I think it varies from client to client. And I think it's as applicable in Nigeria as it is anywhere in the world, where sometimes the client sends a brief and you as a planner or as an agency, you sort of push back to say, your brief feels like you want more. So a typical example is a client sends a brief, they tell you they want an ad that has to do with the entire range of their portfolio. And you push back to say, no, you've not even done your marketing strategy. We could help with that, right? Of course, in an ideal world, a client should write their marketing strategy. But some clients, like somebody mentioned in this panel, don't have, interestingly, the skill to write that. And so having a strategist or a planner in-house who has the ability to do that always comes in handy. But I think beyond that, one of the things that I've realized, and I think, of course, we would expand on this when we talk about whether there's a skill gap or not, is as the number approaches infinity, like the number of strategists in any market approaches infinity, the variety and the level of dexterity also approaches infinity, right? One of the things I realized when I moved to London was there's so many planners, like so many, and there's so many agencies. Like there are more planners doing freelance than even the ones in the agencies. So and therefore, because it's London, it's like there are key markets. There's Australia, Melbourne, there's London, UK. In the US, there are key cities. In those particular locations, people from different parts of the world move to practice the craft. And so you find different levels of expertise. You find strategists who could double as creative directors. Like I've met strategists who are like, I'm like, what are you doing as a planner? You're a creative director. Like they're freaking creative. You understand? You find ones that they're a lot more research oriented. And again, strategy is not just one thing, right? There are different people with different backgrounds. And so I think because of that, oftentimes when clients send briefs, in terms of the expectations, it's usually very at the level of seniority. And while I was even thinking about these particular discussions, one of the things that came to mind is look at Nnenna, right? there is no other Nnenna in Nigeria. There's only one Nnenna, which is sad. You understand? I can't think of any other female strategist at that level, but there are hundreds of them in London, right? Even Carol, although she's not in Nigeria anymore, anyways. But to be honest, how many Carols?
She jackpot. He left us.
How many Carols are in Nigeria? You get me? So because of that level of variety and the level of expertise that is consequently a lot more, you understand, it's very rare for clients not to get what they're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, does. So you've mentioned quite a bit about skill gap, where there's a gap that exists, whether it's from a skill perspective, a knowledge perspective, a tool perspective, or even from a market acceptance perspective, right? So again, having been in this market and now you're in another market, would you see any gaps exist? And if they do exist, what are those gaps?
Again, like with most things, I would rather not say it's black or white. You understand? It's contextual, right? On the surface, you'd say there's a gap, obviously, because it's, of course, the level, the maturity of the market is not the same, right? So it would be unfair to, do apples for apples comparison. But be that as it may, like I said, as the number of strategists approaches infinity, the skill gap also approaches infinity. But I think it would be better to look at it on a level basis. So when you look at the junior strategists in a market like London or the UK, you look at a mid strategist, you look at a senior, a director, look at that and compare it to our Nigerian market. I think there are differences. At the top level, like strategy director, obviously it's apples for apples, right? And then I would easily be like, she's at par with any head of strategy in the UK, right? You understand? Sheriff is at par, you understand? But I think the gap is a lot more wider when you get to the middle. And from my experience, even back in Nigeria, like when I interview people, and again, this is a perspective, this is my point of view on planning, because I'm not a fan of big grammar, right? And I think because of what we do, which is why one of the reasons why we didn't like calling ourselves strategists in NOASAC when we were in NOASAC, as I'm sure you would remember, is I think the role of the title strategy is so abused that people just, once they know how to speak English, they call themselves a strategist, right? Particularly at the middle, right? Maybe not so much at the bottom, because at the bottom, you're still trying to learn the fundamentals, right? Which is where strategy tribe is helping, right? But at the middle, I interview people in Nigeria. The moment they start giving me words that end with ION, I'm like, please, this is a creative brief. Like, say it in simple terms, right? And I think that is where I think the gap really lies, like the fundamentals, the drama. And I think, again, it's a function of the numbers, right? When I moved to the UK, one of the first strategists I met at AKQA was a mid-level kind of guy. Guys, he gave me so much. He reminded me of Fred. I don't know how many people knows Fred, but he was a junior guy because Fred did journalism. He also did journalism. And I have I make assumptions of people a lot. Most times I'm wrong. When I meet strategists who move from places like journalism to strategy, like I immediately respect them because as a journalist, you've written a lot, you've read a lot, you have perspective on the world, right? Or people who do account management and switch, people who do production and switch, Strategy is a function of having so much about you and a little bit of drama, you understand? And I feel like what we have now in the middle is a lot of people, again, I might be wrong, this is my perspective, but what we have in the middle now, where I think the gap is a lot of people who, went to university, studied whatever, not necessarily having the creative bone in them, being smart enough to call themselves a strategist, but not learning the craft as it is. I would bet with you right now, even though I don't bet, is if I take 10 mid-level strategists in our market in Nigeria and I ask, have you read Truth, Lies, and Advertising? I can bet it with you, maybe one, you understand? And so a lot of people just think once you understand that three circles, concentric circles are combined, or is consumer insight and all of that. But for me, I think that's where the gap is, to be honest, to cut the long story short. And again, it's a normal distribution, the numbers. As the numbers increases, maybe that would. And Sheriff is helping us do a good job anyways. Sheriff, help us train more people.
So I'll get to Sheriff in a bit, but just before that, I would love to get Carol's thoughts on this as well, because she's been a strategy lead at a number of agencies now, and Deji talked about how the gap from senior to middle is much larger, right? Carol, in your experience, would you say that is indeed the truth? Would you say there is a gap between the more senior level planners and the more mid-level planners?
I'll start with an example because Nnenna's here. when Nnenna was trying to hire for her role at the time, I think she was moving up and she needed someone to come up to the role. I remember that I know HR had reached out to me, and I think HR just thought I was probably one in the pool, and I can understand that, right? Oh, look for strategists, and they go online. And the first time I met with Nnenna for the role, and she goes, "Oh yeah, if I hadn't seen your name on the list, I was probably not going to hire any other person." I was taken aback by it until I got into the role, and I was like, "Yeah," because I tried to fill up my team, and I think it took me a year.
Wow.
There is a big skill gap. And I tell the team I'm currently working with now that I think as strategists, we do that to ourselves. There is this deliberate, but not quite deliberate, non-effort that goes into strategists every day. Like, people don't read as much. People don't know as much. People don't care to know as much. There is a lot of assumption. You ask people about something and they are giving you their assumption of it, even if this thing has happened. And there is probably 4 or 5 blogs and there's news clippings about it and someone has done a case study about it, but they don't know, right? And I think that it also, there is a big, and I'm grateful for what Strategy Tribe is doing, what O2 Academy is doing. I'm grateful for it because it's helping out. But I've also thought about the next person that requires a year to hire. That's a lot mentally and physically. Just doing the work and the stress of everyone that comes to you, like Deji said, speaking grammar, you're just like, this is not what I need. I just need simple. I gave you like probably a test to do, go from point A to B, and they've come with 60 slides and there's really, there's nothing on it, but very beautiful slides, I will say, and you're just like confused. I think there might be, is there a gap? Yes. But I think there's work to be done in terms of how, as the industry, and I don't want to make this about an agency, because I don't think it's a task that an agency or 2 or 3 can do. But I think as the association, I mean, the association is here and there are key members in here. I think there's a massive job to do in terms of our intentionality about the graduate acquisition programs. Like, we see it with big companies. I think because we're much smaller as an association and even smaller as a discipline, I think there might be intentionality there in how we are working in collaboration with universities specifically. There are smart people that come to you. I think I judged the Young Lifers Award a couple years ago, and you could just see the guys from probably Covenant or some brilliant. So it was just like, okay, where are they going to? They've all gone to client side. They're all working at KPMG. They've all gone to this way, and some of them have just become client service, like not coming into strategy because 1, they don't know that something like that even exists, and 2, we, maybe to no fault of ours, just the way the industry is, creative output is the juicy, beautiful,
pays more.
And they pay more, there's that. There's that. But
yeah.
I think to think about a skill gap and to work around how to work to change that, we might have to do some work in our relationship, the effort we're putting into curriculum, how our people are put in front of certain places. Strategy Tribe did something years ago, Sheriff, I think maybe 2019, just before the pandemic. And we had like a good number of people in the room, maybe 70, 80 people. And most of the people I spoke to after that, some people said, well, I didn't know that there was a woman like this. There was that element. Or I didn't know, I know Nnenna, but I didn't know Deji. I know Deji, I didn't know Carol. Some other people just didn't even know that we had teams. A lot of them thought we were working alone or were just consultants that came in and went away. So I think that there's opportunity with collaboration with universities, integration. If we really want to address the skill gap, and Strategy Tribe and O2 and Co can't do it alone, then we have to change our own strategy on how we get people into the industry. And for our discipline, we might have to look at how we are, you know, when people say policy change, I think policy change is a big word, but what are we doing with the curriculum? Universities that offer marketing, advertising, communications related type of courses, do they know about what we do? Is there opportunity to put this in front of them? When people cross over from being students and coming to the real world, I think sometimes I worked with a guy in Niron, when I was in SYU, brilliant chap. And he said to me, I've never heard, I know they're creative directors. What is this? And in SYU, we're in a back room. Literally, we were in the back room of the building. And it was just all strange and new to most of them that came in as intakes. And I think to address the skill gap, we can identify the problem that we all know exists, but we have to have a workable solution. People like Sheriff, sponsored by the association, should be in front of classes teaching about something related to strategy that is in the curriculum. And then that should be by the association sent to the Pan-Atlantic University or LBS or what, teaching about, if it's not in front of them, how do they know about it? How do we attract people into it? How do we really close the gap there? I think that we can even influence business administration courses, or at least business related courses, if we say as well that strategy is growth oriented or is growth centric and is moving away from just advertising. To tackle a skill gap, we have to get to the root of problem about people, the quality of the people. And I think quality of people is about having people like this call in their faces, telling them about the books to read, how to think. Because I think this is an interesting career. To think for a living, I think it's pretty damn good, if I say so myself.
Right.
to think for a living, to get paid to think, you know. Literally paid for it. This is high quality, high level stuff. And I'm not even trying to shade creative guys because I know they're working high quality stuff.
Already.
Right. So we can close the skill gap if, as an association, we take just being deliberate to put ourselves in front of where we can get the people to come into our industry. And that way, it's not too burdened to have it as an afterthought. And I'm not trying to say what strategy does an afterthought, but it comes at the end, people have tasted it, they've worked in agencies and they're an account management, like, oh, you know what, I could do strategy now. So you go for a quick course with Sheriff, but how much can that give you? And what is the burden on Strategy Tribe to have to keep doing that alone? They can do it, but how long will they continue doing it alone? So I think we can address skill gap, but we have to look at the ways in which we can get inroads into where we can get the right people into our industry and of course the right people into our discipline, training and all of that. And you know, clients will appreciate it more and they'll pay us more money, I guess.
Awesome.
Right,
Thanks a lot for that.
Sorry, can I
All
just
right,
add
please
something?
go ahead.
Because you know, when Deji was talking, and I love the fact that you said there's when junior strategists come in, everybody is like in the dark, right? But it's at that mid-level that you see the lack. Any and every strategy director that is on this call, do one thing for me. Realize and remember that 60% of your job is to teach, right? Because yes, I didn't study advertising. When I was in school, I had no idea that a thing called advertising was a thing I could do for a living, right? I fell into this completely by mistake. But I was taught strategy by strategists, and it was hard, and there was rigor, and there was discipline. People who work for me, often juniors who don't like me because I will make you do the thing again and again and again. I won't do it for you, right? And so like I revised this thing 4 times, but you've got to do it. I used to spend weeks at a time traveling around the country, watching research. And that's how I learned to understand consumers and to find insight. I've spent hours of like that 10,000 hours thing, hours of my life looking at research, learning how to analyze, right? There's a difference between reporting and analysis. I meet young people and, that don't understand how to parse text, that don't understand how to read data. And most schools won't teach you that, right? That you learn that in practice. And so in terms of this skill gap, please, those of us that have the skills, how are you intentionally, and all of us have work, we're all doing a million things. Strategy teams are always small if you even have a team, right? But you've got to make sure that your juniors are learning, right? And that requires discipline and rigor. And I think for me, the biggest challenge that we have, and it is something that is reflected in the wider society, right? Is that we don't have discipline and we don't have rigor. So please, I'm begging you, if you are director of strategy, what is your training curriculum for you, right? Because people who have worked for me, they will tell you that you have to learn. You don't have to do it the way I do it, but you have to learn to do it, right? And I take that part of my job seriously as a senior person, because that's how I learned. That's why I'm here. Because when I started, when I was going from junior to mid, it was a really rough ride, right? But I learned, and that's why I can stand up with anybody in the world and talk, because that 4 years that I spent, it built craft skill in me. And that you're not going to learn in school, that you don't learn in class, that you learn on the job. And you only learn if the person who is managing you is intentional about like transferring the skill. So I just wanted to make a plea to those of us.
Thanks a lot for that. So to all the junior strategists listening, please hold your strategy lead and hold your director and demand a training. So I have a question here from Joshua, and I would love to address it to Sheriff Akinpelu. He says, what steps should a fresh graduate take to build the necessary skills to become a strategic planner in advertising or PR? So Sheriff Akinpelu, do you mind helping answer that?
Thank you. So I think I'll find a link. I think I did a LinkedIn post about 4 years ago about how to get started in any profession you find yourself. And it's basically one of the things you need to look out for is, irrespective of what you are facing right now, what is your vision? So you need to think long term and then work backwards. So where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, in the next 2 years, in the next 1 year? And then do that exercise. So then after that, you need to now look out for players in the industry that you want to play in. Who are the people there? Now, judge people by their work, not by what they say. If I have any advice for anybody can come online to talk about stuff. But for me, my mantra is I judge people by their action, what they do. So if you say you're a strategist, I want to see your work, what you've done, because a lot of people talk strategy, they don't do strategy. So look out for people that are doing amazing stuff and, reach out to them. I've hired a couple of people through that means. There is a young man that was at SPV. He left Extreme to join SPV, and he left SPV for Insight. He was a copper. He was wrapping up his NYSC, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn. And we got talking, and yeah, he got into the system. And in less than a year, done people that work for us. So oftentimes, when somebody joins my team, before they clock a year, agencies would have moved them. Not once, not twice, not thrice. I can't even list. But the point is, look out for them and, reach out. Tell them you need support. A lot of people would give you that space and guide you. The second one is you need to read.
Sheriff, while you're at it, help me to Abego.
Okay. So you need to also love to read anything readable, because you don't know. One of the good things about strategists is that you need to be able to talk about everything, whether it's religion, sports, and all of those things. So read. But for a beginner, I always advise start with elementary. If you are a beginner, a mid-level strategist, there are a lot of people that don't know the elementary of marketing, of strategy and all. The only thing that can supercharge your progress is when you start with the elementary knowledge. So read. There are books that you can read. You can join Strategy Tribe. A lot of people on this call, they contribute fantastic stuff in Strategy Tribe community. And most of the panelists here are also our facilitators. So join Strategy Tribe. You will see a lot of books that you can read. But one of the books I recommend is Chris Kosek book on account planning. If you are a beginner, Chris Kosek on account planning. So you can read his book. You know, it's quite very easy. Then you need to now begin to put, you know, what's out there that you are looking for social opportunity. You are looking for this opportunity. You are looking for that opportunity. It's very, very important. Now, if you're able to do all of that, I'll look for that post maybe before the end of this call. I'll share the link so that you can see what I'm talking about. By the time you have done all of that, you are 40% ahead of your mates when it comes to landing any role in marketing communications, because you know where you want to be. You know the people that will help you get there. You've reached out to them. You have also built a nest of resources that you can tap into, you know, while you're at it. So that time that you are going to spend in the trenches, as Nnenna has said, will determine whether you are going to be a strategy director in the next 15 years or you'll be a strategy director in the next 10 years. So that would be what I would recommend. But on the side, I want to drop this. There are two types of skill sets that we need to have. There are people that leave university and then they go straight for their MBA or for their postgraduate. You see, what I usually advise is after university, acquire hands-on skills in any industry that you want to work in. So if it is digital marketing, go and learn digital marketing. You know, go to do Google digital marketing course. You can go to Orange Academy, do their digital marketing program. By the time you are done and you graduated, you will get a job in digital marketing. You will earn more money and you can use that money to go and, you know, to spend on your master's degree, your postgraduate, or any of those courses. Don't just leave school. It's my own point of view. It's not, and all of those things. The moment you do that, especially if you go to international institutions, you struggle to survive. But if you have hands-on skill in a particular industry, that hands-on skill, say you do your, maybe you do strategy certificate program with us or diploma with us, and you have your strategy skill set in place, you will make money either working full-time at your agency or side projects that people will call you for. Quickly, let me do this. When you put those monies together, you will be able to afford the money that you use to go for maybe MBA in a better institution instead of going to any school just to claim that you have your MBA. So those are my recommendations. Let me see if I can find the link and share.
Yeah, please, I'm sure we would appreciate that. So thanks a lot, everyone, so far. I think I just have about one question that I would like to ask the panelists before we start going into questions proper, because I see that quite a number of questions are coming in. So if you haven't already, please type in your questions and we'll try to take them as quickly as possible, right? So we've spoken a lot about how we need to start evolving our strategies, you know, and I'd just like us to really put that into a bit of a summation. And for that, I would love to get your opinion, Sheriff Adekoye, because we know that strategy started as, or strategy as we know it today, started as mostly a research-led role. That's in the early days of BNP. But over time, we've gone beyond that. Now it seems like we are at another point whereby it's a thing of, do we evolve beyond what strategies is seen today, or do we move forward into you know, something a little bit more evolved than where we are now, right? So I'd just love you to speak a little bit on that. You know, where is the discipline headed generally, as you know, the strategy department here?
Oh, okay. Thank you, and I'll say a very big thank you to every member of the panelists, the panel rather. It's been insightful, even though it's been insightful. Well, strategy as we know it today is evolving. and where we are, we've not gotten to our final destination for certainly. We started, from the days when it was research-led. You need to look at quantitative longitudinal analysis of things. What happened 2 months ago, 6 months ago, 1 year ago. Then we can then map where we ambush our target audience, ambush our competitor. But that has changed. That has gone into the level where critical reasoning, certain tools, kernel analysis, Sensidium, archetype mapping, all of these would come together. That's when we got to the age of strategic planning. And that's what we had up until maybe late 90s and early 80s, early 2000s. Right now, what we see is integrated strategy, where the brief does not stop at you giving creative brief or strategy direction. It stops when it is E to E. You unpack the audience, you unpack the competition, you unpack the target, and you connect that to the ambition of your client. Because quite a number of people believe that once you do X, Y, Z, the next thing you do is you think of as a strategist. You need to be a part, you need to know what goes on, and that's why it's integrated. And whatever you design must be versatile. Your idea, your big idea, your brand idea must be versatile. Is this idea, is this tenable across digital, experiential, print, and all of that? Basically, because you do not always have the luxury of doing a longitudinal or a narrow speed. And digital has happened to us, and digital is taking up a big space in what we do and how we do things. And it has changed. It has brought a very big revolution to what and how we consume our services. So where are we headed? Simple, straight. We've gotten, and I'm getting closer to the point where we become consultants, not just strategy consultants, but solution consultants. So what we design is not something across communication, but business solution consultant. And that's why you see that quite a number of consulting organizations, giants, Deloitte, Accenture, why they are having few the bigger chunk of the cake across marketing communications share across the world. So what that tells you or tells us is the fact that beyond just marketing strategy, advertising strategy, we have bigger role, bigger opportunity, clearer play in the space where we become part of their thinking, part of how they survive the landscape, part of how they win ahead of their peer, part of how they build sustainability. It is not enough for you to say, oh, I've gotten XYZ and be a brand. How do I sell this? I'm targeting millennials. You bring in the solution, you analyze, you cascade that beyond what they've given you. Sometimes historical data may be involved, may be important, but cohort analysis of your target audience will play a critical role. And I wouldn't want to birth my narrative without touching on the fact that we are suffering from the menace of shortage of skill gap. Carol spoke the fact that she's been trying to fill a position for over a year. I am still in the same situation. Myself and Sharif, we've been on this for, I don't know, for only God knows. I spoke with 2 or 3 of my friends who run agencies in Nigeria. Even up until 2 days ago, you see people with lion and tiger-like CVs and resume on LinkedIn. When they appear, they are, as timid as.
Don't break the table.
Okay, let me leave the table intact. I have 2 to 3 vacancies in my office, in my team, and we've not been able to find the right person, the right guy. Basically because people think strategy is all about big English. Once you bring pie charts into 3 circles and you know a little of appetite, then you are a strategist. We believe and we forget the fact that intuition, consumer-centric understanding of the cultural connect, the nuances. Sometimes what you need to bring to the table to solve this solution is not even written in any textbook. Because the guy who wrote the textbook in Brisbane or the guy who put together the work in Helsinki has not heard about action beaters. That guy does not even know how a street life guy in Lagos consumes alcohol or how alcoholic beverages have got into people's lives. So where is your intuition? Where is your cultural nuance connect? So, well, not to deviate so much from the question, the future of strategy is integrated consulting and solutioning. That's where we are headed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharif. So just before we answer a couple of questions, I have the president of AAN here with us, also the CEO and CCO, that's the Chief Creative Officer of Noaza Communications. And he would just love to give his perspective, particularly from the perspective of AAN, as to what they're looking at in terms of training. So boss, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for barging in. It's intimidating to be in the midst of thinkers. Please pardon me. But it's good to be here. I think Nnenna knows this. I always say this. If I wasn't a copywriter, I mean, I would have loved to start as a planner. There's no creativity without strategy. I mean, that's a truism of sorts. So thanks for allowing me to say a few words. I mean, I've enjoyed every bit of this, I must say. But I think one thing that is sticking out is the need to build capacity in the real sense of it. Yes, there are all sorts of initiatives on the individual levels, commendable, but like we all admit, they are not enough. I think things only get better when there is an intervention at an institutional level, when associations like a AAN, I mean, people take it for granted, for instance, that LAIF Awards was started by AAN. I mean, but it's been there, it's 20 years next year, and it's had a big impact on our industry, whether we admit it or not. So the same kind of effort, needs to be applied in terms of solving where we are. I mean, we have a huge capacity challenge in planning and every other discipline that you can think of, more so in planning. Interestingly, because even sometimes when you run into people who have the ability to do planning, they don't even know what they have. We have an internship program, and I think Nnenna will remember what we did at TBWA. We had the KG program back then. So we have an equivalent of that in Noaza, we call it an animal farm initiative. And the last set of cohorts, out of about 8 people, or 9 or thereabout, about 4 or 5 of them, easily, they'll make good planners. And some of them don't even know what they have. And that tells you about where we are and what we can do. In fact, one of those cohorts, the first set we did, he's still with the agency today, about 5 years going, Aniete, brilliant young man, and it keeps growing by the day. So we're not helping ourselves. So agencies individually need to do stuff, no doubt about it. But as an institution, this is what we have to do. So for AAN, there's been a big talk for quite a long time about this school. And we want to break that jinx, with this administration and actually make it happen that we can train people because that's the future of our industry. I mean, I think about it, I'm scared that if we don't do something about it now, we're staring extinction in the face, not just for planning, but so many other disciplines. They're going to just gobble us up and we have nothing to say. I would hate to be an old man and keep shaking my head about what could we have done. So I'm hoping that I can have all of you on that journey and let us change the narrative about people. Having said that, I also think, apart from what AAN can do, we can also influence the curriculum. The interesting thing about the curriculum today is that rather than lumping things together as mass communications, now universities are beginning to break them down to advertising, public relations, and what have you. So what are we doing? And we are leaving all of that to ARCON alone. So we are the final consumer, so to say. Why don't we influence what gets into that curriculum working through ARCON? And one of the ways we can do that is that we need to lean on experts like yourselves. You guys, I know there have been talks in the past about having an APG or whatever, you need a planners group in the real sense of it that is active and visible, not just somewhere in the, on the ground. We need to feel you. We need to know what you guys have as an agenda, and you can now help us shape that in terms of what we're looking for. Other than that, it's going to be a big struggle, but I believe we have everything it takes. I've seen it. I've seen people with no experience come in and become, great guys in planning and other disciplines. So there's nothing stopping us. That's my little bit. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, boss. I think I speak for everyone when we say we're all looking forward to what AAN has to ask for us when it comes to the training program. So let's get into questions just a little bit. So I see a couple of questions here, and we'll just try to answer that as quickly as possible. So I see an anonymous question here that what are career pathways that a strategist can explore beyond the advertising agency practice, right? Person here is looking to transition outside strategy. What career pathways can they look at, right? Again, I know we've spoken a lot about moving beyond just strategy and going into sort of consulting type definition. But again, I would still love for us to just talk about this real quick. So I believe it was Carol that spoken about it before, right? I might be wrong, but Carol, do you mind giving your perspective to it?
All right. I think you see a lot of planners or strategists go on to become consultants, of course, for companies as strategists. But I think that there's also a culture of moving over to the client side. There's an example. There's someone in my past life I've known who moved to ASOS and used to work in an agency and then moved to ASOS and became a almost product content strategy, something in that line. It was working with the merchandising team on what fits what and what people were, of course, they're data analysts and co that work as you would expect with an e-commerce team, right? And the person was working with them to see what the trends were, what people liked, and just helping them in channeling that into their comms. There's also something interesting, like I think you would, if you look at Nnenna's CV, Nnenna moved into almost starting a tech startup. I think that's what it's called, for a bit, right? She gave that skill that she had into a business as a startup. When I was in YBR, I was fortunate to work with USAID as a client, and I thought about the opportunity as working as someone who for not-for-profit, right? There's a big communication demand there, and there's a skill in understanding how to communicate and understanding consumer needs and finding opportunity there. I think you need to sit down and map out where you think, or what industry you think you would work at, or what industry needs your skill set as a strategist, as a thinker, as someone who is planning to move something from point A to point B, and find out how you can be useful to that. We've seen it even in our industry in Nigeria. People move from the client side, from the agency over to the client side, and are helping to grow the business and take a completely different form when they go there and become product managers, right? Because they're building something to life. So of course, there's opportunity to do something else with your skill set. I think start off on the point on what your skill set is. As a strategist, what is the thing that you have been able to develop? What do you have a knack for? Where are your strengths with data? When I worked in CAS 45, I worked with a data team. They were literally beside the consumer marketing team. And we worked together because we needed to see, in the marketing funnel, they would say the heaviest part of the marketing of the funnel was the marketing, right? And the rest, with someone make a running joke that Power BI does the rest with the data team. And I think there are people who I know who I left who came from the agency and worked in CAS 45 who have gone on now to be completely full tech bros, like, that's what they become. But they had a background in communication and strategy, but they worked closely with data team and they've taken that to another level and just giving it a different life. But it came from a place of skill set. So what do you currently do in your role? What can you offer? Where is your advantage, I'd say? And then what industry do you think needs that skill? And then maybe map that out and then think about how you can build. But I think that there are examples amongst us that you can also look for people who have moved and ask them what they've done and where they've moved to. And I use LinkedIn as a great thing, as a great place to network and ask people questions. And I think they'll be willing to help and guide you. But yeah.
All right, thanks a lot for that. So we'll just take about 2 more questions. And this question I'll direct to Adekoye. So you can give us 2 perspectives. So I have Olayiwola asking here about strategy briefs. right? If it's a normal practice for a strategy brief to come with a budget, right? And the reason why I singled out that question is we're talking about the potential to move beyond just, say, communications and start to think innovation, start to think, how can I solve this problem? If it's not a communication problem, what else can I do, right? So should it even come a normal practice that you're sending a strategy brief, you're sending a budget to say, hey, I'm not just thinking communications here, go beyond that, right? So is that the practice, in the UK markets, right, compared to, what we've had here so far?
I'm not good with budget, so it's a tricky one. But just jokes aside, I think it's a function of every agency and client that they have a contract. You understand? Like I'd assume that if a client is sending you a brief, there's an MO, there's some sort of contract between the agency and the client. And if there's a retainer, obviously that's already subsumed. Like the strategy side of things is already subsumed under the retainer. But in situations where there are no retainer, again, maybe in Nigeria, this is something where I've experienced this in real time where, with a client where you do not have a retainer relationship, you send them a bill and you have a line item strategy and they're like, sorry, come again. What's that? And you're like, our strategies now. You're like, what strategies? Oh, we'll do the strategies. You do the strategy. Don't worry. But I think on the flip side, I think it's a norm. Because when I was at AKK, when I was at AKK, it's a very expensive agency, like ridiculously expensive agency. And they hardly do retainers. They usually charge per project. And they charge for the strategy. And I think, again, like I said, it's a function of how mature the market is, which is not to say in Nigeria, there aren't agencies you will charge your strategy, line item, and they'll be fine with it. But at the end of the day, it's on a case basis. It depends on the relationship. As a strategist, you hardly have control over that kind of thing. Because if I work as a strategist in an agency, to be fair, it's not my job to go to the client to say, oh, pay the agency for my service. There's the business people for that. But again, as a strategist, even when the client agrees to pay, the odds of them paying again the next time is a function of how much value you've been able to demonstrate the first time, which all comes down to, again, what value are you bringing to the table. When it comes
thanks a lot, Deji.
Speak to the likes of Jumoke, please.
So I'll just take one more question because I really hate to run out of time. But I'll direct this question to both Nnenna and Sheriff Akinpelu. So it says, this is a strategy director, right? What are the metrics you have in place to determine specialization for junior or growing strategists, right? He also asks that, what are the measurements that we should put in place to know when a junior strategist is ready to make that transition to say a mid strategist or a senior strategist, beyond just looking at the years of experience. So please, in about a minute, 2 maximum, you could just give quick responses. We could start with Nnenna first.
I can only talk about like how I do it because and everybody's different. I think for me, what I look at really are craft skills, right? And so, and anybody who's worked for me knows this. I will look at accuracy in terms of when you are looking for insight, parsing data, how often are you right? I do look at speed, because one of the things that lets me understand that you're ready to move up is how quickly you can get things done. I also will look at curiosity and proactivity. If you are somebody who's sitting, waiting for the brief and then waiting for me to tell you what to do, it's going to take a really long time for you to get promoted. So I think if you're looking to see what can you be tracking, I think you track accuracy, like literally how detailed are they and how often are they able to pull out useful insights? How quickly are they able to get things going? How proactive are they in driving strategy, so that this is not someone who waits, who just, because what I see with a lot of junior strategists is that the brief comes from the client and they just move the information that was in the client brief around and then they forward it, right? So is somebody proactive in adding to the strategy? And is this a person who is curious, right? Are they reading? Are they spending time, their own time, looking at the competitive set. So really that's, I don't know that I have hard, numbers, but those are the indices that I look at to see if somebody is progressing, or if they need some developmental support.
All right, thanks a lot, Nnenna. Sheriff Akinpelu, do you mind giving us your thoughts on that question as well?
Yeah, so I think Nnenna has covered it. There's a matrix I stumbled upon, I think it was about 5 years ago, that shows the different levels that a strategist needs to, the phases. And some of the pillars that were listed was research, communication, doing or making, insights, presentation, manifestation, management, and counsel. But if you look at all of those pillars, one of the things that is important is when you are not lazy, when you are able to take clients' brief, understand it, and share your point of view about it. When you have elementary skill sets, what are the elementary skill sets that you need? You can read and understand a brief. You can do a little bit of desktop research. You can do go into the market, supervise, coordinate research and all of that, and then report your findings. So, but it depends on the individual and their ability to, their test for knowledge. So even for all of us on this call, we don't believe we know it all. We are all students of life, and we always keep learning. So I think it's our ability to show that this was me last year, or this was me 3 months ago. This is what I can now bring to the table now. I think that's better much sums everything up.
All right, thank you so much, Sheriff. So we're just about out of time. So I want to thank these fantastic panelists for sharing all their advice with us. I think it's been a really wonderful session. And I also like to thank the organizers who set this up. And again, thank you to the audience for your really wonderful questions. So once again, if you've missed anything, the session will be available online. And if I didn't get to ask your question, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll, channel it to the right person. And one more thing is the fact that all our panelists today are very open. So please feel free to reach out to them directly, right? I might be setting some of them up, but please, they have their Instagram accounts, they have their LinkedIn accounts. So please feel free to just jump into the DM of any of them, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to take your questions. So before we bring this...
Sorry, before
okay, Sheriff,
you go ahead. Yeah, so I want to use this opportunity to recognize one of the OGs of strategy in the building, the Ogas of the Ogas, Mr. Jonathan Oyevovotu. Mr. Jonathan, we see you. Thank you for joining this session. And for those who don't know Mr. Jonathan has been a planner since the early 90s. So you can understand. So it's actually very interesting that Mr. Jonathan is here. So I just wanted to use the opportunity to hail Mr. Jonathan. And also, I wanted to, because I know people will start dropping off. Sorry, Ife. I wanted to use this opportunity to tell us that at Strategy Tribe, we are working on the strategy report, the first of its kind in Nigeria, and we can even see for Africa. And we are going to be rolling out our questionnaire very soon. So for those who are on this call, please, when you see the questionnaire across different marketing communities that you belong to, please, I beg, help us fill it, so that when we are having these kind of sessions, we can speak with data points to show people that are in the industry, people who are thinking of leaving, what people are going through, especially strategists and planners. So I just want to use that to give us heads up, so that when we see the questionnaire, you please show us support by filling it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Sheriff. So once again, if you could just give a virtual round of applause to our audience. And I see a lot of thank yous. This has been a really insightful session. I'm glad and I'm really happy that we've all gotten something really tangible from this session. So from all of us here at AAAN, as well as the panelists, I wish everyone a wonderful day.
Thank you
guys.
for having me.
Bye.
Nnenna. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Carol.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
Carol.
Father
Bye.
Yonuru. Thank you.
Yeah, my brother, we catch up. Bye, everyone.